Wow, pura vida. Wow. Wow. Ella, ella. Oh, wow. 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 Pura vida. How's it going? How you guys doing? Thanks for tuning in once again. Appreciate you guys taking the time to do that on your, especially on your Saturday night here. Um, we're just gonna continue today. We're gonna read the next, hopefully the next two chapters. I'm trying to get at least two chapters today. We already got an introduction of who Diego Duran was yesterday, the whole background. He might most likely is what they're calling mestizo or hybrid, half Indian, right? He's half Indian. He's not just any Spaniard. So he's half Indian. He knew the Nahuatl language. He was there since he was a baby, literally, almost. He said he got his second set of teeth in Mexico, even though he was coming from Seville, which was a Moorish town. Seville, yeah. Who are these Spaniards? Remember, a lot of them are Sephardic Jews, Moorish Muslims. A lot of these people were people of color as well. You know, we ain't trying to blackwash. We've actually shown the sources, we've shown the genealogy, a lot of the time, the descriptions of a lot of these people. And so we got to just tell the story how it is. If that's what it is, then that's what we're gonna, show. We're gonna show true perspectives. We grew up with a whitewashed world, and it was always okay to go ahead and put all these whitewashed images, and nobody ever complained. And now that I'm doing correcting narratives and showing a better perspective, a more truer perspective, a lot of people complain. And I'm only saying this because I got a lot of complaints from yesterday from new people, a lot of trolls. So if you're new to the channel, make sure to catch up. Check out the previous presentations. We've done a lot of work, a lot of research in the last 6 years, over 600 presentations, hours and hours of, information you can go verify, you know? So we're going to continue. Again, we always dodge the hijack. We don't take, everything, face value, like, from one person. We have many books, many, again, sources. But we're just reading the perspective of this person, Diego Duran, in the 1500s. And remember, he was in Tenochtitlan, Enoch, the land of Enoch, huh? Tenochtitlan. And yeah, he was there in that beautiful place we showed yesterday. Make sure to check out part one if you didn't. It was a great introduction into his story and chapter one. You know, we're gonna go ahead and continue today in chapter two. Thanks for again for being here. Let me see. So we're gonna go to this version again. I got a couple versions, and I also have the Spanish version again. Make sure we verify the original sources. Again, he wrote this. He published this in 1581. It's been already translated and copied and published a couple times after that. This one right here is from the 1800s. Again, it's the history of the Indies. Hold on, let me change my view. Okay. But guys, so bear with me because we live. So again, thanks for being here. Appreciate everybody's patience. Thanks to the moderators, and if you're here to debate, discuss, troll, just don't do it. You just get kicked out right away. We're here to just build and just get a perspective here that we never really got in school. The history books, again, they never told us any of this stuff. We read chapter one, and it was pretty revealing what he was saying about what he thought about the Indians being so-called Jews or the 10 lost tribes of Israel, so-called Hebrews. Anyways, so we are at the book, The History of the Indies of New Spain by Frey Diego Duran, translated, annotated, and with an introduction by Doris Hayden. And again, we're going to go to chapter 2 today. A lot of info in here, It's a lot of info. You guys can get this online. You can buy it on Amazon, all that. So I did a short recently of this, and I have the Amazon link there if you guys are interested in purchasing it. All right, let's go. We're all the way in chapter 2. Yeah. Wow. And just looking through the chat, shout out to all the real people out here and all those, real supporters. And if you're new, welcome. Thanks for taking the time to consider watching this and trying to understand what's going on over here. But yeah, let's go ahead and start at chapter 2. It says here, which treats of how these Indians left their 7 caves in order to come to this land. Remember, we left off. He was talking about that the story said they came from the 7 caves, and there's an actual place in Ohio. It's literally the 7 caves, and it's used to be a tourist site. Now it's been closed, I believe, since the 70s or 80s. But Ohio has a lot to do with this. There's a lot of migration legends coming all the way up from there, going down into the southeast, Utah, southwest into Mexico, and yeah, So it says here the Indian nations emerged from those 7 caves where they had lived a long time in the year of our Lord, 820. 820. Remember that something happened when we were reading the Olmec book. It seems something happened, a cataclysm. The whole area got incinerated where the Olmec were around this same time period. It's interesting that the these people, the Mexica and the Maya, are actually saying they came around the same time. They had to migrate. It took them more than 80 years to reach this country because of the many delays that took place during the migration. Along the way, they built towns and settled in places that they saw were peaceful and pleasant and that they favored. And once again, if you didn't watch part 1, this is a first-hand account. Diego Duran, he talked to the elders there about their stories. He actually knew the Nahuatl language, so he was able to translate a lot of the codices and read these stories. And he was saying how much it resembled the scripture, the Old Testament, the Bible. All right. But as they explored the country, they found better, more advantageous sites So they abandoned the other places and went on. The old people, the sick, and those who were exhausted were left behind. In this way, those regions were populated. So I picture like the Pueblo towns and all that. It's all about migration, people on the move. They don't know why. They always theorize, oh, it must have been this, must have been a famine, must have been a cataclysm, must have been this. But they had temporary dwellings there, literally, temporary dwellings. The cliffhangers and all these people in the Southwest, they were on the move. They were coming from the north, going down. The people erected great curious buildings in each settlement along the way, like I just said, so that today remains of these edifices are found in many places where they stayed. Okay? Yeah. So going back all the way to my Hebrew series, right? Part two, I was talking about, the migration of the Mexica and the Pueblo migration stories, how it's all related, you know. They still can't figure out why they were on the move like that. Again, and they're telling you right here, Diego Duran, in his time in 1580s, right? He's telling you, hey, they left buildings where they stayed, as they were going along the way. For this reason, they tarried in coming here. Although the distance from Aslan, a place of whiteness, not skin, pureness, or maybe snow, is so short that it can be covered in a month. The cause of this was their stopping to sow and harvest, and their lingering. Sorry. To rest and build towns, all this being consistent with their natural temperament, which is deliberate and slow. In that way, they reached this part of New Spain in the year 902 AD, according to how he's calculating their dates, right, from the codices and the stories that he was told. Welcome, welcome, much love, pura vida, mi gente. The people who left the caves first were the following six tribes: the Xochimilcas, the Chalcas, the Tepanecs, the Cohuas, the Tlalhuicas, and the Tlaxcalans. It should be noted, however, that not all left together or in the same year, but some first and others later. In this way, they abandoned the region of the caves, one tribe doing what it saw another do. These people are fond of imitating others, like monkeys or sheep. If one jumps, they all jump after him. So it was that first the Xochimilca left, followed by the Chalcas, then the Tepanecs and the Colhuas, and after them the Tlalhuicas and the Tlaxcalans. The Aztecs remained behind. Hmm. Due to the due to a divine command that will be spoken of later. These people affirmed that God had promised them this land, a promised land, okay? Again, these people affirmed that God had promised them this land, for they are the people he held dearest. Are we talking about chosen people, huh? Like the tribe of Judah among the Jews, so-called Jews. That word didn't exist back when they're talking about these times. Thus they were loath to leave and did not abandon the place of the caves for 302 years. In caves, huh? Underground. What was going on in the surface? It is evident from the count of the years that the other tribes came first and took possession of the land. The Aztecs then lived here three and took possession, 301 years, and the others 602. The Xochimilcas were the first to arrive, and they made a circuit of the Great Lake. They saw that the place they occupied today had a good location on a pleasant one, so they settled there, finding everything they needed without meeting opposition or causing injury to anyone. The leading men of that tribe took possession of the mountain ridge that today belongs to the Xochimilca Nation, and that stretches as far as a town called Tuchimilco or Ocope Tlayuca by another name. Other towns that form part of this nation and are still called by the same name include Oquituco, Tetela, Hueyapan, Tlamimilolpan, Chumiltepec, Tlacotepec, Zacualpa, and Temoac, Tlayacapa, and Totolapan, Tepoztlan, Chimalhuacan, Escatzinco, and Tepetlispan. How's that for a tongue twister, huh? with all the other towns subject to Chimalhuacan. All these are part of the Xochimilca nation. All of those we just named. We're just talking about the Chi, right? Milka nation. And that is what all the territory of the Xochimilca people is called, including Huitlahuac, Mesquic, and Culhuacan. Soon after the Xochimilca, the second group, arrived. These were the Chalca lineage, who on their arrival joined the Xochimilca and adjusted their common boundaries pacifically. They designated as their capital the town of Tlalmanalco. The leading men and chieftains of that lineage went out from here to live in those places, in the important towns that were in this province. Amequemecan, Tenango, and all those of Huachopas, Ayotzinco, Chalco, Atenco, San Martin, and all the villages, towns, and cities now found in the Chalco region. This is a much smaller area than that occupied by the Xochimilcas, because there were many more people among the Xochimilcas than among the Chalcas. All right. So remember how big, when we're looking at the images in part one of Tenochtitlan, right? A big major city. So you can imagine all these different tribes and clans grabbing a little spot. They got their own parts. So that's what I'm kind of picturing. The Tepe, not, I'm sorry, the Tepanecs came after the Chalcas, and just like the others founded their main center, this was Tlacopan, Tacuba, although the court and principal people resided in Azcapotzalco. After some time had passed, the lords and principals spread out and occupied the towns of Tacubaya, Coyoacan, Azcapotzalco, Tlalnepantla, Tenayuca, and the entire range that runs to the border where the Otomi people live. The fourth to arrive was the Texcocan tribe, a group as numerous as that of Xochimilco. They were accompanied by many illustrious and courageous men. This fact is proved by the order and fine planning with which their city was built, and the beauty with which they adorned and maintained it all the time they could. They made their capital the place which is now the city of Texcoco. All right. Again, we saw all these images yesterday of what these places look like, and it did look pretty awesome. And from here, they dispersed in order to build towns such as other people had done. Some went to Huexutla and others to Coatlinchan, where the court of that nation resided long before they moved to Texcoco. Still others built in Tepetlastoc, Acolman, Chihuatla, Tezitlan, Tepe, Tepectan, sorry, that one's hard, Tepecpan, Otompan, and many other villages, towns, cities, and capitals, which I shall not mention so as not to waste time and paper. It is enough to state that the Texcocan nation occupied as much land as that of Xochimilco. Among these places were Coatepec and Chimalhuacan del Rio, called thus in their language, and Chicoaluapa, and all those along that part of the lake shore. The fourth to arrive was Texcocan tribe, a group of numerous. Hold on, did I? Sorry, guys. In this region, there are beautiful towns, and the inhabitants are in every way educated and courteous, clever, sagacious, of fine speech, elegant, and polished. Their refined style and speaking is so outstanding that it reminds one of the Castilian of Toledo in Spain. Okay? You hear what he just said, Diego Duran, in 1581 when he published this? About these people he's meeting there, right? This specific tribe, the Texcocan nation. Just like the people in Toledo, Spain, huh? In comparison with these people, the others seem coarse and rough. Some will think that I am partial in speaking so well of Texcoco. Although I did not acquire my milk teeth in that city, I got my second ones there. Since the remarkable things of Texcoco have been extolled by others, everything I say is already well known. When the lake was completely encircled by these four tribes, who occupied its shores and shared the land among themselves, the Tlalhuicas came, a very rough people in every way, and of coarse speech. As the newcomers found everything occupied, they settled in the place that they inhabit today, making Huanahuac the main center and capital of their province. From here, the men of that group went out, like the others, to settle in other towns, some to Yautepec, others to Huaxtepec, to Acapictlan or to Tlaquiltenango, and to all the other towns and villages in this region, now called the Marquesado, because it belonged to the most fortunate Marquez del Valle, Hernan Cortez, huh? You hear that? That was Hernan Cortez's spot. This is certainly one of the most beautiful and pleasant lands in the world. And it is, listen to this, guys, all right? We're talking about true terrestrial paradise, beautiful place. We're talking about the Hesperides. We're talking about all these legends of the Greeks and the Egyptians and all these other old world nations. This is what I've been trying to tell you. They were always describing these places here, but they have mythical, mysterious names for them. And nobody ever knows where that land was. Marquez del Valle, yeah. So, this is certainly one of the most beautiful and pleasant lands in the world. And if it were not for the great heat here, it would be another Garden of Eden. There are delightful springs, abundant rivers full of fish, the freshest of woods, and orchards of many kinds of fruit, many of them native to Mexico and others to Spain, which supply all the neighboring cities with this fruit. The Marquesado is full of 1,000 different fragrant flowers and is very rich in cotton. We're talking about Hernan Cortez. He had cotton plantations. Listen, he's very rich. The commerce in this product is carried on here by people from all over the country. After these five tribes had settled, the people of Tlaxcala, originally called Tezcayán, arrived and, seeing that there was now no place where they could establish themselves on this side of the mountains, went behind the Sierra Nevada, the snow-capped ridges to live, where they now have their home. They chose Tlaxcala as capital of their dominion, but as they were very numerous, the lords dispersed toward Huexotzinco, Calpan, and Cholula. If I were to mention all the lands occupied by the Tlaxcalans, it would tire the reader without purpose, as the innumerable towns, villages, and dwelling places are well known. The king, our Lord, has seen fit to exempt them from all tribute, since they were loyal and faithful subjects in the conquest of this country. Again, in the conquest of this country, these people conquered the people he's talking about when they got there, right? They conquered some people that were there. Much love and respect to all the real ones in the chat. Back for what's mine in the house. Yeah, that's real. Check out the YouTube channel. Make sure to check the brother out, what he got to say. Everybody matters. All information matters. You already know. Yeah. When these six tribes and different peoples had settled, they recorded in their painted books the type of land and kind of people found here. Among these, there are two paintings that show two types of people, one from the west of the snow-covered mountains toward Mexico City, and the other to the east where Puebla and Cholula are found. The people from the first region were Chichimecs, and those from the east were giants, the Quiname, which means men of great stature. All right? You hear that? The few Chichimecs on the side of the Valley of Mexico were brutal, savage men. Their name, Chichimec, means hunters, those who live by the hunt. They were wild and rustic, and they were called thus because they lived among the peaks and in the harshest places of the mountains. All right, primary source letting you know. Where they led a bestial existence. with no propriety or human organization. They hunted food like beasts of the same mountain and went naked without any covering on their private parts. They hunted all day for rabbits, deer, hares, weasels, moles, wildcats, birds, snakes, lizards, mice, and all the rest of the unclean animals. Well, theirs ain't that. Oh, and mice, huh? And they also collected locusts, worms, herbs, and roots on which they lived. Their whole life was reduced to this hunting for these things. They were skillful in this occupation. In order to kill a snake, they spent an entire day crouching behind a bush on their haunches, watching the snake at its lair, as a cat, when it smells a mouse, will stalk it next to its hole. All right, so he's talking about specific people, the Chichimecs, in his time. That's how they were living, he's saying. These people slept in the hills, inside caves, or under bushes, without any heed for sowing, cultivating, or gathering. But you see how different these people are than the people he just described before them and in chapter one. You know, it's nothing like these people. So there's different nations here is what I'm trying to show. And we tend to generalize and we say Mexican. Mexican's a melting pot. It's like a lot of different nations, people, especially in those times and in modern times. They did not worry about the morrow, but ate what they had hunted each day. Thus men and women went into the hills to search for food, just as a dog goes to a rubbish heap seeking something on which to gnaw. As the women accompanied their husbands, they left their little children well glued with milk, hanging in small rush baskets from branches of trees until they returned from the hunt. These few Chichimecs were so spread out that they had no contact with each other. They adored no gods and had no kind of ritual, nor did they recognize any ruler. They lived a carefree life according to natural law. When the new nations came, these savage people did not resist them, nor did they show anger, but rather awe and fear. They fled toward the hills, hiding themselves there. They hid in the way they hid in the way they flee from us today, because it is true that we have not shown ourselves to be so kind and loving as to induce them to do otherwise. The newly arrived people, seeing, then, that the land was left unoccupied and free, chose at will the finest and most peaceful places. The other people who were found in Tlaxcala and Cholula and Huexotzinco are said to have been giants. Okay? They were enraged and agreed by the coming of the invaders and tried to defend their land. I do not have a very reliable account of this, therefore, I shall not insist upon telling the story. The relation that I was told, even though it was long and worth hearing, of the battles of the Cholultecs fought with the giants until they killed them or drove them from the country. These giants lived no less bestiality than the Chichimecs, or they were like the Chichimecs, as they had abominable customs and ate the meat from the hunt raw. In some places of the region, enormous bones of the giants have been found, which I myself have seen dug up in rugged places many times. All right, giant skeletons, just like in North America they found. Right, he's saying he saw giant bones in his time, 1580s. These giants, while fleeing from the Cholultecs, flung themselves from the precipices and were killed in order to avoid falling into the hands of the others. All right, the Cholultecs are part of my people, the Chorotega, that fled from Cholula. All right, these were the Nahua nations that came later on and drove them out, and they went ended up in the Guanacaste region of Costa Rica as the Cholultecs. So I'm learning something new right here about that part of my genealogy. They were here fighting giants and stuff. The Cholultecs had been extremely cruel to them, harassing them, not leaving them in peace, pursuing them from hill to hill, from valley to valley, molesting them, hounding them until they were destroyed. All right, the giants. Even if we detain the reader a little, I should like to tell of the manner in which the people of Cholula and Tlaxcala annihilated the evil nation. This was done by treason and deceit. They pretended to want peace with the giants, and after having assured them of their goodwill, they invited them to dine and made a great banquet. An ambush was then prepared. Some men slyly robbed the guests of their shields, clubs, swords, and many other kinds of weapons they used. Then, having feigned peace, having fed the guests, and having stolen their weapons while the others were off guard, Some of the Cholutecs suddenly came out of hiding and attacked, killing all. The giants tried to defend themselves, and as they could not find their weapons, it is said they tore branches from the trees with the same ease that one cuts a turnip, and in this way they defended themselves valiantly, but finally all were killed. Once the giants were annihilated, the other built their towns and cities as they wished, without any opposition or difficulties. All right, once they got rid of the giants, they were like, all right, we good now. Thus, peacefully, they settled the boundaries among themselves in order to define their lands and possessions clearly. I mean, if you guys read the Book of Joshua and all these other stuff, like you'll see when they were coming, in their exodus and taking over their promised land, they were doing the exact same thing as he just described. What a coincidence. They communicated with one another, they intermarried. They lived in peace without problems or disputes, cultivating their lands and building their dwellings, their houses, and their huts. They had no ceremonies, they had no idols, but adored only the sun, Tashta Hijack, which they worshipped as God, the creator and cause of all things. They sacrificed to him the fallen way. When any game was killed, they removed the blood-stained arrow and offered it as a symbol of sacrifice. Hey, that's to the sun, recognize him as deity. To the sun, is it really to the sun? From this time on, the Chichimec barbarians acquired a little culture and lived like rational people and covered themselves with clothing because things had seemed natural to them before now were regarded as shameful. They also made huts in which to live. They began to have relations with other people and to trade and bargain with them, losing the fear they used to have of these neighbors, becoming related to them by marriage, beginning to have lords, all right, the intermixing, recognizing the authority of some men over others. They congregated in different places. They opened their eyes to distinguish good from evil. They abandoned their savage life. But these Chichimecs always stayed in the hills and retired to the mountains separated from the others. 302 years after the six bands of people had left the caves where they had lived in the region of Aztlan and Teotihuacan, the seventh tribe, the Mexican nation, Mexican, came to this land, which they believed had been promised to them by their gods because they were the people closest to them. Starts to hijack when they're saying their gods. All were idolatrous and felt favored by their deities. Aside from this, they were bellicose, courageous, undertook great feats and exploits fearlessly, but also could be courteous and show some breeding. As they tarried much on their journey, stopping at times for long periods, and as it is my intention to relate their history, it is necessary to write a special chapter regarding the events that took place during their migration. They suffered great trials in the hope that the country that was promised them by their prophets, all right, a promised land that was, listen, by their prophets and chieftains would really be the promised land, fertile and full of plenty, with great riches and with everything that could be imagined or wished for. Anyone who knows this place and whose eyes are free of prejudice knows that the above description is true of this country. For among all the lands in the world, this one can compare with the finest. All right, that was a beautiful promised land. It fit the description they were looking for when they settled. The Aztecs, or people coming from Aztlan, that's what Aztecs mean, Mexica, brought with them an idol called Huitzilopochtli. Now, he's calling it an idol. That's what the Spanish priests and all these people were calling these things idols. Check out my video I have. We had read a book from Jose Acosta, how Huitzilopochtli was being carried almost like the Ark of the Covenant. And there's many references to they don't know whether it was a man, a deity, or something. So when they're saying idol, they don't know, but they were talking to this so-called Huitzilopochtli, who had four custodians to serve him, right? And idols, he had people serving him. He prophesied to them in secret all the events that would take place on their journey. The people held this idol in such reverence and awe that no one but his keepers dared approach or touch him. He came concealed in a coffer of rushes, so that no one of the natives had ever seen the form of their idol. The priest made the people adore the idol as a god, preaching to them the conduct they were to follow, and the ceremonies and rites be observed in honor of their divinity. This they did in all the places where they set up camp, just as the children of Israel did when they wandered in the wilderness. All right, so again, check out the video I have on that. They were literally setting up tabernacles. All right. Um, yeah, so literally setting up tabernacles for this so-called idol. But then he spoke to them, and in many accounts, he's actually a man and yeah, one of their priest kings. So that's what I'm saying. We got a version here by Diego Duran. He was raised, he's half Indian. He was raised by the priests, the Catholics, and yeah, to become a Frey to help evangelize the Indians. So he's adding his thing here, and they have that same narrative. So this was probably told to him because I've heard the exact same narrative by many of them. So in the footnote, let me see. Let me show where to go. 9. So 9 it says, Huitzilopochtli, the god hero of Duran's work, is presented at the beginning of the text as an idol or as a human being, a chieftain who led the Mexica during their migration to find their promised lands. Later in the chronicle, he appears as a deity represented by an idol in the main temple in the city of Mexico, Tenochtitlan. All right? So, human being, that's what I was saying, guys. Once you start putting it all together, you see there's a story here that matches, other stories we know of. We're gonna go to chapter 3. If you guys are willing, if you guys are down, we can, get down with chapter 3. We ain't in no rush, right? Hope you guys enjoying so far. Shout out to all the real ones in the chat. Chapter 3, which treats of the arrival of the Aztecs or Mexica in this land of Mexico, and of the events that took place before they reached it. So great were the feasts and exploits of the Aztecs or Mexica, so full of adventure, that those who are not acquainted with these exploits, if you don't know these stories, all right, you're about to find out, and with these people will enjoy hearing of their ancient customs, and of their origins and descendants, and of many other events regarding them that are worthy of remembrance. I am aware of the great difficulties in relating these ancient histories, especially since they begin so far back in the past. All right, so they're just trying to interpret the codices and the stories, right? And also, he got his biases and his hijacks there. So, you know, we got to use our discernment too when we're reading this. But let's see what he has to say. Moreover, some early friars burned ancient books and writings, and thus they were lost. He's telling you they were burning the books. He's snitching on his own, the own people, the friars that taught him. Then, too, the old people who could write these books are no longer alive to tell of the settling of this country. And it was they whom I would have consulted for my chronicle. He said I would have just got the story from them, like other stuff that he already has. He told you already in chapter 1. It also seems to me that it will be impossible to tell everything that has occurred in this new Spain, as it is such a large country. There are so many kingdoms, provinces, cities, and villages here, so many large towns where innumerable people live, divided into many nations, languages, and ways of life, as well as dress and customs. All right. Again, many nations, guys. America's a true old world. This is what I'm saying. When you're saying these Mexicans, you got to dodge your own hijacks. It's been a melting pot, you know? So, again, that's what I've been trying to have people picture. Again, this was divided into many nations, languages, and ways of life. Innumerable people, okay? As well as dress and customs. The good and bad fortunes that befell a single one of these nations would be enough for one painstaking historian. All right? So they generalize, is what he's saying. He'll grab the story of one nation and generalize. He would still have enough to do in writing the exploits of only one people, even though he abbreviated the history, which is what I have attempted here. However, this brief history will have a special purpose, that nothing regarding the Mexica nation be left unsaid, because although the feast of all the people were to be scattered over most of this new Spain during many epochs, and were achieved by courageous men, The real origin for all these valorous deeds was, after all, Mexico, Tenochtitlan, for it was here that information about all that passed in the other provinces and kingdoms was reported, because it was the head and center of them all. So great was the power and importance of this center that it has been my desire to revive it and bring it to life again after so long a time. After so long a time. Come on now. All right, we read in the primary source 1580, Tenochtitlan. We saw the pictures right in part one, and a majestic empire. It's just the advance, the canals. It was like a Venice, right? The waterways, floating islands. Come on now. This happy land was produced. Oh, sorry. This happy land has produced sons of fine and subtle intellect, sons who could have revived its ancient glories and given it new life with their outstanding skills. Thus, the ancient splendor would have lived forever in the memory of men, and they would have been adorned with the beauty of their own qualities, so that newly arrived foreign peoples of different nations and from different nations and from different regions, all right, different peoples, like those who come to this land, just like the ones that already had gone there, and he's in the 1580s already telling you, man, foreigners going in there, attracted by its fertility and richness, would have been pleased to observe these things. Thus, they would lose the bad and false opinion that the Mexica people were barbarian and uncivilized, as they have been called. That's because there is another group that took the title Aztec that came much later than the actual Mexica, and they were more of a barbarian type of people. Thus, they would lose because although they showed blindness and diabolic self-deception in their rites and idolatries, in matters of government and good order, submission and reverence, majesty and authority, courage and fortitude, I have found no one to surpass them. And I want to point out all these things so the memory of these people will last forever. With this in mind, and although I do not claim any greater power of intellect than anyone else possesses, the hope that I can realize this objective and hope of success often overcomes greater difficulties, has helped me in this task of writing an account of those things of the country that interest me. And although I am ill equipped and prepared for this task, I venture to embark upon it and set out to bring to light this obscure and forgotten history. I shall refer to the most obvious and well known facts, for some vestiges of the past can lead us to an understanding of former events, even if we had no more record than the stones carved with the likeness of the ancient kings in the enclosure at Chapultepec, where the rulers had their portraits carved at the end of their days, and many other images and sculptures one comes upon at every turn. These alone would suffice to tell of the grandeur, great deeds, origins, and descendants of these people. Although these images do not tell the whole story, at least they are an indication of the greatest achievements of these nations. In the year 1193, all right, listen, he's saying in the year 1100, so, you know, the thousands, right? AD, this is what he's talking about. After the birth of Jesus, after their calendar creation, right? Zero, when they put their zero, right? And then they started calling everything else AD. In the year 1193, the Mexica nation reached this land. All right, 1000. This is way before another so-called group that their name in Aztec came. The Aztec Empire didn't establish themselves till like the 1400s. So I know it's a little confusing, but we gotta break all this down because everything gets generalized and grouped together. These people, like the others who populated the country, departed from the seven caves. Okay, is that in Ohio? What we talking about, Aslan? These seven caves. There's seven caves in Ohio. Google it right now. Check out part one. We went over it. In a land where they had lived called Aslan. This name means whiteness or place of the herons. Because of this, the people originally were called Aztec, right? So Aztec means people coming from Aslan, which means people of whiteness, not complexion, pureness, people of pureness. They were also called Mesitin. Listen to this. They were also called Mexitin or Mexicans in honor of the priest and lord who guided them on their migration, whose name was Meshi, Meshi, Moshe, Meshi, Moshe, Meshi, Moshe, Meshitim, Moshe, Moshe. What is Mexico named after? We went over this so many times, guys. It's named after Moses or Meshi, Meshitling. The entire tribe took this name, okay? The entire tribe took this name, just as the Romans took theirs from Romulus, the founder of Rome. Maybe. Where did Romulus get his name from? Was a Ramon that the pomegranate in Hebrew? The Aztecs now have another name, which they acquired after they took possession of this land, Tenochca, from the Tenochtli, Enoch, 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 Tenochtli, or prickly pear cactus that sprang from the rock in the place where they built their city. In this sense, Tenochca means the owners of the prickly pear cactus. The Mexica left the 7 caves and embarked upon their journey in order to seek the land promised them by their gods, according to traditions led by their priests. I find in their painted manuscripts and in their oral traditions that the people made long stops on the migration and lived for years at a time in peaceful, fertile places abounding in water and forests. In some places, they stayed 20 years. Are we talking about when they were going through Utah? When we're talking about beautiful, fertile places abundant with water and forests? The four corner regions, what are we talking about? When they're on their migration down? Hmm. So in some places they stayed 20 years, in others 15, and in others 10, more or less. And painting that I was shown in Santiago, Tlatelolco, I saw depicted many towns founded during this migration, some of them still inhabited, and others now abandoned because the people there have died off. Only vestiges remain of the buildings, cliff dwellings, and temples erected to their god. The first thing the people did in each place was to construct a temple. The second thing the people did when the temple was finished and ready to receive the coffer in which their god was carried was to plant maize, chiles, which are a kind of pepper they eat, and all the other crops they depend upon. So he had to explain what a chile is because remember, this is 1580. They don't got that back in Spain. American plants, maize, chiles, all that. It's a kind of pepper, okay? So all this depends upon water, watered either by rains or by irrigation. And that done, they either had or did not have good crops. For if their God decreed a good harvest, then they reaped. If he determined otherwise, they abandoned the fields. Huh. Except when the maize was ripe. Frequently, these fields were left to old men and women, and the sick who could not go on. In this way, some places were settled and were left with the seeds of those crops that had been planted. This was the purpose of the Mexica, to populate those places with their people and become rulers of the land and of its fruits. We have mentioned how the people of this nation brought their principal god, without whom they dared not move. They also revered 7 other gods who represented the 7 caves, out of which the 7 tribes or groups had emerged. All right, so this is his interpretation of what he's seeing in the codices. Okay, these 7 gods were greatly esteemed and had their names and titles to indicate divine superiority. As today, titles denote noble men who possess them. All right, so are these gods or these people some of their ancestors, some of their priest kings, some of their prophets? These titles of honor and greatness confer solemn authority and name of those deities. The god of the first barrio was called the barrio, all right? The first barrio, okay, was called Jopican Tecutli, Lord of Jopican, place of the Tlapanecs. The second, Tlacochcalcalt Tecutli, Lord of the House of Darts. The third, Huitznahualt Tecutli, Lord of the South. The fourth, Huatecpan Tecutli, Lord of the Eagle Place. The fifth, Chalmecalt he of the Jade lineage. The Jade lineage, huh? The sixth, Tlacatepanecalt, he of the People's Palace. The seventh, Izquitecalt, he of the place of toasted maize. The Mexica passed through the land of the Chichimecs, seeing this new country in the plains of Cibola, all right, cities of gold, all right, one of the seven cities of gold, Cibola. But nothing in that land pleased them, and finally they came to rest in the province that is now called Mechoacan, land of those who have fish, and a place called Pascuaro. And before we continue, I wish to tell how that town and the rest of the province were founded according to their account. It should be noted that the Aztecs and those who are now called the Tarascans of Mechoacan and those of the province of Malinalco were of the same group of faction. They were related and all spoke the same language. When they had reached Pátzcuaro and saw that it was so peaceful and pleasant, the priests consulted their god. They begged him, if this were not the land that had been promised them, that at least he allowed them to leave part of their group there. The god Huitzilopochtli, remember, this could be a human being, they don't know, answered the priests in dreams, telling them he was happy to do what they asked of him, and it would be done in the following way. When certain men and women went to bathe in the great lake, as was their custom, after they had gone into the water, those who remained on shore should steal their clothing, the garments of the men and of the women. Then they should gather up their things and steal away, leaving the others naked. While those in the lake were still enjoying the water, the Mexica, obeying the order of their god, broke camp hastily and left the place and followed the route indicated by their god. After the people in the lake had bathed with much contentment, they came out and looked for their clothing with which to cover themselves, but could not find the garments. Realizing that they had been tricked, they went to the camp where the other people had been and found it abandoned. When no one dared to tell them what route the Mexica had taken, naked and forsaken, and not knowing where to go, they decided to stay there and settle the land. Those who tell this story say that they remained dressed only in their own skin, men as well as women, and as they were there a long time, they came to lose shame and leave their private parts uncovered. These people used neither loincloths nor mantles, but eventually wore long tunics that reached the floor, like the robes of the Jews. I saw these robes some time ago, and I understand they are still used among the countrymen of that province. The god of the Mexica had a sister who was called Malina Xochitl, wild grass flower, who had accompanied the group on its migration. She was there too, right? So we talking about human being. She was beautiful and of spirited disposition, and was so clever and cunning that she became skillful in the use of magic and sorcery. Her craftiness was so great that she caused much harm among the people, and made herself feared in order to be adored later as a goddess. The people had endured her because she was the sister of Huitzilopochtli, but finally they asked the god to get rid of her. Huitzilopochtli advised the priest through dreams, and was his custom to abandon her in the place he would indicate, together with her attendants and certain elders of her group. In, in order to please the people, the priest told everyone of this revelation. He said, your God who beholds your suffering says that his sister, with her cunning and evil dealings, is dangerous to you. He is very offended by this and filled with wrath toward her because he sees the power she has acquired by illicit means over fierce and harmful creatures. With magic spells, she slays those who anger her by sending snakes and scorpions, centipedes, and deadly spiders to bite them. Therefore, in order to free you from this affliction and because of the love he has for all of you, it is his will that this night, when she is in her first slumber, when she is sleeping together with her attendants and followers, while we remain awake, we shall depart and abandon her. Not one of us will remain to show her the way, because your God says he did not come here to bewitch the people, or cast spells upon them, or control them by these means. All right. So he's reading a supposed tale from he's giving us an interpretation of a tale he heard of the origin of these certain people right here. He wishes to aid them by the courage of their hearts and by the stretch of their arms. He wishes to extol his own name and raise the Mexica nation to heavens. He will make us lords of gold and silver, and of all metals, of splendid feathers of many colors, and of precious stones of great value. Your people, the Mexica, will build houses and temples of emeralds and rubies in his name, as he is the Lord of precious stones on this earth, and Lord of cacao, and of richly worked mantles that he will wear. These are the reasons for his blessed coming. He has troubled himself to guide us to these lands, to give us repose, and to bestow upon us rewards for the trials that we have undergone, and those we are still to endure. Therefore, he commands that his sister be abandoned in this place with her evil sorcery. After the priest had spoken and revealed these things, all those who were not followers of Malina Xochitl went away during the night. They abandoned her and her attendants, who were asleep. They followed the road toward Tula, their deity leading them, and finally reached the summit of the hill called Coatepec. When morning came, Malinalxochitl found herself alone with her followers. She wept sorrowfully and bemoaned the departure of her brother, who had thus mocked her. As she did not know the way, she asked advice of her aides and of the people who had remained. They led her to a place now called Malinalco, where she and her partisans settled, naming the town for her. For the woman called Malinalxochitl, as I have said, that is why the town is called Malinalco. It is the custom of these people to name town for its founder, which is also a Hebrew practice. The people of Malinalco to this day have the reputation of being wizards and sorcerers. It is said they inherited this custom from the woman who founded the city. Hmm. The Mexica nation has now divided into three parts. One had stayed in Michoacan and settled that region, where they invented a special language so as not to be mistaken for Mexica or Aztecs. Do you see that? That it makes sense right there. So this Aztec nation did not want to be mistaken for the Aztecs. Huh, so there's a separate Aztec group since they were offended by humiliation they had suffered. Another part of the nation remained in Malinalco. Very few people reached Coatepec, but those who did, the Mexica Aztecs, were strong and courageous. Along the way, in two places called Ocopilla and Acahualcinco, where they had spent some time replenishing their provisions, they left some aged and sick persons, and this diminished their number. As the Mexica went into the land of Tula, the Chichimecs and mountaineers of those regions became uneasy and showed their displeasure and anger. The Otomi people were especially annoyed, complaining, "What people are these? They are daring and impudent, for they dare to occupy our lands without our permission. It is not possible that these are good people." Sorry. Okay. So again, yeah, even though there's migration legends and these people are settling, they're saying, "Hey, we got came to a promised land." In most cases, there's always other people occupying these lands. In all these migration stories. So just always keep that in mind. The Mexicas, not heeding these complaints, almost immediately erected, as was their custom on settling a territory, the temple of their divinity, with the sacrifice stone that they used as an altar, around which were placed the other gods whom I have described. When they had settled down in their shelters around the temple, in the order that their god and their priest decreed, some to the east and others to the west, some to the south and others to the north, then in dreams the god commanded the priest to dam up the water of a river that passed close by. The water was to flow through the plain and form a lake around the hill where they had settled because the god wished to make a likeness of the land he had promised them. When the dam was made, the river flowed over and covered the entire plain, forming a great lagoon. The people planted willows, cypresses, and poplars. They covered the shores with reeds and rushed, and the lake began to swell with all kinds of fish that are found in this land. Waterfowl appeared, ducks, wild geese, herons, and coots covered the lagoon, and many other kinds of birds that are found and breed today by the lake in Mexico, Tenochtitlan. All right, so when he says today, he's talking about 1580s, right? 1570s, whenever, he started writing this book. The place became filled with aquatic flowers and cattails that attracted different types of thrushes and magpies, some red, some yellow. Their singing and chattering created great harmony and gladdened the entire place, which became pleasant and enjoyable. The Mexica were so contented here, although it was no more than a model, no more than a pattern of the promised land, that they did not want to leave it in order to search for an even more satisfactory place. For this reason, they began to sing and dance with songs inspired by the luxuriant verdure and beauty of the place, and as many of the group, whose principal troublemaker was Huitznahua, together with a woman called Coyolxua, did not want to go on farther because they had become fond of that place, they exclaimed to their god, "O Huitzilopochtli, here is your abode. This is the place to which you were sent. It is here where your name should be extolled on the hill of Coatepec. It is now your privilege to rejoice in the gold and silver, and all the metals and precious stones and shining feathers of many colors, rich and precious mantles and cacao, and other splendid things found in this new land. From here you will conquer the four regions of the world with the strength of your chest, of your head, of your arm. Here your name will receive glory and honor. This is the capital of your kingdom. Command your fathers and your custodians to call the people together. Let them bring an end to the pilgrimage and search of even more peace than we enjoy here, so the Mexica may now repose and rest from their hardships." The god Huitzilopochtli was greatly angered, and answered his priest, saying, "Who are they who disregard my will, who object to my decision, and to try to contradict them? Are they by chance mightier than I? Tell them I shall take vengeance against them before tomorrow, so they will not dare give opinions in those things that I have determined and for which I am here. They must learn that they are to obey me alone." They say that the face of the idol at that point became so ugly and frightening with its diabolical skull that the people were filled with terror. At midnight, when all was quiet, they heard a great noise in a place called Teotlaco, the divine ball court, and in the Tozompanco skull rack, both sacred places dedicated to this god. When morning came, the people found the principal instigators of the rebellion dead there, together with the woman called Koyo Ki. All the breasts had been torn open and the hearts removed. From this incident came the accursed belief that Huitzilopochtli ate only hearts, and thus was established the practice of sacrificing men, opening their breasts to remove their hearts in order to offer them to the devil, their god, Huitzilopochtli. All right, so again, interpretations upon interpretations. All right, but hey, it's pretty crazy stories here. What does it all mean? Who are they talking about, right? When the people saw the severe punishment their God had inflicted upon the guilty ones, amazed at the tremendous noise they had heard during the night when this had been executed by their angry, cruel deity, they were greatly frightened. But the wrath of Huitzilopochtli did not end here. In order to demonstrate further his fury, he ordered his priests and custodians to destroy the defenses that controlled the lagoon, to open the dam they had made and let the waters run their former course. The priests did not dare disobey. They removed the defenses and broke the dam, letting the waters run. They did this against their will because these waters had surrounded them and sustained them and had given them tranquility. When the lagoon was destroyed, the reeds and the rushes began to dry up. The trees also withered, and the freshness of the place disappeared. Fish and frogs and all of the creatures that bred in the water perished, all that the people used for their food. Waterfowl began to fly away until the region became a dreary and desert-like as it had been before, right? This was a desert before. They had created this dam not to destroy a city or town, but to create an oasis. So dams are not always a bad thing, I guess, if you're trying to create an oasis in a desert. When the Aztecs saw the desolation and barrenness of the place they had thought would be their home, they decided to consult their god as to what he wished them to do. They believed he would now be appeased by shedding of blood and destruction for time dissolves anger and softens hearts. When the people consulted with Huitzilopochtli, he ordered them to leave that site and go on to Tula. This they did presently. The Mexica reached Tula in the year 1168. All right, this is according to the chronology that he's so-called supposedly interpreting, right? And they stayed here a short time. From Tula they continued on to Atlitlalaquian, and from there to Tequisquiac. They stayed at Tequisquiac on borrowed land for a few years, sowing the fields for their subsistence. From this place they went on to another called Tozonpanco, where they wished to stop and repose, but they met opposition from the local inhabitants and had some encounters with them. Men on both sides defended their own factions. Then the Mexica continued to the town of Xaltocan. Here, finding the natives more friendly, they planted their fields of maize and chiles and other seeds they had brought with them. Feeling more secure there, they made earthen walls and terraces for greater safety, since they could not be sure that their people would be safe. After they had harvested their crops, the Mexica gathered their provisions and went to Ecatepec, and from there to Tolpetlac. Little by little, they entered the territory of the Tepanecs. The Tepanecs were the people of Azcapotzalco and Tacuba and Coyoacan, an illustrious nation who at that time ruled over the other groups in the valley. The Mexica finally came to rest at Chapultepec, Hill of the Grasshopper, where with much dread they constructed a camp of huts and fortified the place as best they could. When they consulted their god about how they should proceed, he replied that they were to await the change of events, since the deity would know what measures to take and would advise them at the right time. But he added that they should be prepared for what was to come, because this was not the place he had chosen for their home. This promised land was near, but first they would meet great opposition from two nations, so they should make their hearts strong. Awed by this anger, the people chose a captain from the most noble men among them to command and guide them. This chieftain was Huitzilihuilt, Hummingbird Feather. He was a skillful man of courageous heart and was capable of leading his people. After he had been chosen captain general of the Mexicas and all of them had sworn obedience to him, Huitzilihuilt ordered the hill terrace with encircling walls of stone. These went up the hill at intervals, one after another, like a great staircase, the steps about 2 meters wide. At the top, these walls leveled off to form a spacious courtyard. Here the people gathered and fortified this high point. They, they stood guard day and night, placing the women and children in the middle, surrounded by the soldiers. They made ready their arrows, wooden spears and swords, edged with obsidian blades. They also carved stone points and shaped stones into round balls for their slings. All these preparations were for their defense. Okay, and that's the end of chapter 3. Let me see how we got here. Who we got in here. All right. I think I'm gonna end it right there, guys. Yeah, chapter 4, 5, we can get on another video. I'm gonna go ahead and check it out, pre-read it. I read the Spanish versions of this, uh, so I'm gonna go ahead and see what we can dig up on chapters 4, 5, and 6, and maybe make a video out of that. All together, get the good parts from here on. But I just want to read these first couple of chapters so you can see what these kind of books are about. Gonna try to read some of these old books. And again, we're always in the mind of a hijack too. We gotta always dodge the hijack and try to interpret it and have discernment. But this is what he was writing in 1580. Diego Duran, what they were calling mestizo. All right, I'm gonna put my 1 second, guys. All right, 1 second. Let me just put my email here. Oh, there you go. Thanks, J9. That's my email. I'm also on Telegram, Instagram. I just haven't checked my Instagram in a while. Um, but yeah, I just want to read this once again, not just read a little paragraph because that's kind of what we do all the time. So we read, the introduction. We know who Diego Duran is, Tenochtitlan, the whole environment. So we're kind of we're reading his interpretation and him and the priest of Frey's interpretation of their migration story. So, you know, we can't read it ourselves, unfortunately, try to interpret it ourselves, but, That's what he was saying in 1580. That's all I wanted to show. Hope you guys enjoyed these readings the last 2 days. We're gonna try to come up with a video every day in December. Just if we have to just read certain things. I got a lot of genealogy videos planned. I've been doing a lot of genealogy on the side, of important, people and history and all that. So that's coming out too. We're gonna continue the Olmec series. It's gonna get interesting with the Olmec, so-called Olmec. All right, so got a lot of videos coming planned. I want to do a lot of also go back to some of the old videos and series and do a couple marathons because I got a lot of new people and we can do that live with commentary, do some reactions to it. But yeah, I appreciate everybody that takes the time to come in here and listen to me read. Hope you guys enjoy. I find it interesting these first-hand accounts. You gotta use your knowledge and what you have researched and your discernment and pull out the babies and dodge the hijack always. But remember that Joshua and them when they were conquering the promised land, hey man, they were also getting rid of people and there was people already living in what they were calling the promised land, the Holy Land, Jerusalem, and all these other places. So it's kind of almost the same story. These good guys, bad guys, we're still digging on that. What is a good guy? What is a bad guy? It depends, I guess, on on the individual's perspective. You know. So we're just trying to read history and put it all together, and not just say, oh, the Spanish came and did this, and they said that, and they said, what do you mean? What book are you talking about? Who said that? Who? Give me a name. Give me a book. Give me a source. All right. Much love and respect. Hold on. Actually, we always got to go out with a good song here. Hold on, guys. Black Latino. All right. Let's see. Hmm. Shout out to Ocelot, 12 for the beat. Appreciate everybody tuning in. Much love to all the Patreon supporters too, holding me up. And check out the Patreon if you haven't. Got a lot of good books there, and you'd be supporting. And it's a great community there too. We also have a Telegram back chat. So you gotta do search for my name, should pop up. And come with no hijacks, and we're there to build. And we're looking to respectful conversations and all that. So don't come with no hijacks in the Telegram. Yeah, late but here. Hey, hey, always on time. But don't worry, you get to rewatch it. We're already done, but you get to rewatch it all from the beginning. No problem. No problem. Much love and respect. Pura vida, mi gente. Thanks for tuning in. I'll give you your Saturday back. Wow, wow. And if you haven't heard a song I uploaded the other day, here it is. Yahuwah, a Kurimeo. Después volverán los hijos de Israel, buscarán a Jahuá su creador y a David su rey, y temerán a Jahuá y a su bondad en el fin de los días.
Yahuwah, kama yashara Allah. Yahuwah, hey ya, hey ya, hey ya. Yahuwah, baraka yashara Allah. Yahuwah, hey ya, hey ya, hey ya. Sound the trumpets, wake up the nation. We breaking the spell, expose the false narration. This ain't religion, it's the sons of Jacob, blood relation. Rise the lions, take your place, it's your coronation. Babylon must fall, it's time for your liberation. We get our land back, there's no negotiation. These are stolen lands, this is Roman occupation. Come Yasharallah, no more separation. We're dreaming away, we just passing our days. Living with no breaks, we just stuck in this phase. With no escape, while truth is in your face. We really need to wake up, you know, before it's too late. Mentira y engaño entre la historia bien contada. Consciente, no callo, mi lengua bien armada. Regar hábitos mi ancestro, herencia que fue robada. Entre comienda esclavitud, nuestra cultura fue borrada. Yahuwah, kama yashara Allah. Yahuwah, hey ya, hey ya, hey ya. Yahuwah, baraka yashara Allah. Yahuwah, hey ya, hey ya, hey ya. We gathered the saints, we ready for battle. I stay keeping the code, drop nation on rival. Digging through history, the truth we unravel. Dodging the hijack, no time for your babble. On the road to Zion, our ancestry decoding. Warriors for blood, don't be provoking. I be praising Hawa, fringes on the clothing. We're closer than ever, prophecies unfolding. Spreading the knowledge, these droplets return in the oceans. I'm riding with prophets, most high my devotion. Breaking the spell, propaganda, holy Roman. Many are being called, but few will actually be chosen. Mentira y engaño entre la historia bien contada. Consciente, no callo, mi lengua bien armada. Regar hábitos mi ancestro, herencia que fue robada. Entre comienda esclavitud, nuestra cultura fue borrada. Yahuwah, kama yashara Allah. Yahuwah, hey ya, hey ya, hey ya. Yahuwah, baraka yashara Allah. Yahuwah, hey ya, hey ya, hey ya. Yahuwah, kama yashara Allah. Yahuwah, hey ya, hey ya, hey ya. Yahuwah, baraka yashara Allah. Yahuwah, hey ya, hey ya, hey ya.